Hey everybody, welcome back to YouTube, and today we are going to talk about Trae Young. We got a report earlier today from Shams. Actually, I guess Mark Stein was the first person to kind of report this earlier today, where yeah, he said Trae Young was open towards seeking a trade. And then a few hours later, we had Shams drop a tweet basically confirming the same thing. So now, yeah, we have two really credible sources about the Hawks and Trae Young working towards making a deal towards whatever team, right? And have another report from Mark Stein as well too. The Washington Wizards are interested in this, and they brought up CJ McCollum as like the main piece for this. And yeah, so let's talk about this kind of in two parts, right? The first part is going to be Trae Young's actual trade value, and the second part is going to kind of be the teams that should be interested in him or how it would look for Orlando, right? And I should clarify actually by Trae Young's trade value, this is going to be about what he's probably going to actually go for versus how good of a player he actually is. Because if you've been paying like any type of attention recently, you know the Hawks have been struggling a lot since Young's return, and that's not all on him. They were around like a 500-ish team, I think, when Jalen Johnson was really leading the charge and Trae Young was still injured. And yeah, defensively, since he's come back, they've been a lot worse. Now, again, I don't think you can just blame this all on Trae, which of course we know Young is not a good defender and he's going to make your defense worse. Defense worse, right? But there was definitely a lot of kind of like outlier shooting from opposing teams that kind of just tapered off towards like the as the season wore on, right? And we've seen teams put together decent enough defenses with Young, especially when they had Clint Capella still as their starting center in his prime, I guess, for the Hawks back in like the early 2020s. So to be clear, as a guy who, I'll admit as a Trae Young fan, he is a black hole in defense. He's someone who, I guess black hole is not the right word, but he's a weak link and definitely someone who you can attack. And yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get too much into the actual how good Trae Young is debate because I feel like at this point we all kind of understand that, well, by himself, he instantly makes any team like an above average offense, right? And he did that for years and years. And of course, they were at their best when they had a bunch of shooters with Kevin Huerter, Danilo Gallinari, some other guys I'm blanking on right now, and like rim rollers like John Collins and Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu still. But the team has fallen apart a little bit since then through a combination of injuries, trades that didn't end up working out, like for DeJounte Murray, of course. But even still, throughout all of that, right, he's gotten them to the playoffs or play in, and essentially it's been built on this team's like offense with Young because he is such a honestly, I would say he's a generationally good passer slash operator and just like scoring opportunity creator out of that high pick and roll, right? That's pretty much all he does. And again, it is a weakness because this type of stuff doesn't work quite as well in the playoffs. It's a lot more like game plannable than a team with a lot more dynamic offense where you have five guys who can all attack. Oof, pardon me. Yeah, it's not as dynamic as a team that can all attack like OKC or Boston or like Denver, for example. But point aside, like we know who Trae Young is as a player. He's ball dominant. He can do a lot of great things. Efficiency issues, of course, especially in recent years since that 2022 season. And you can definitely kind of tell from the way this like Wizards trade is kind of framed, where I think Mark Stein even reported that the Hawks would have to consider giving up a pick, like giving up a first round pick just to get off of Trae Young's contract. And he is on a 48.5 million, I think, or was it 50 million? I forgot, somewhere in that range. But he's in that range of like expiring contract. Well, sorry, he has two options, right? So either his deal runs out right now, or sorry, like runs out at the end of this summer, or he can choose to opt in for his like $50 million player option for next season. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure which one Young is going to take, right? Because I don't think if he opts out into unrestricted free agency this season, I don't think he's getting like a 4-year deal where he's getting paid $50 million a year. So just in terms of like a single annual annual salary basis, he's going to make more next year than he would on his next contract. At the same time, for a guy who has had some injury problems this season, who I don't know, maybe he wants to ensure like a I just even on that point though, I don't think that Trae Young is going to sign a contract anywhere close to what him or his agent think he's worth this offseason because I don't think he's going to get a max contract if he signs a free agency deal this summer, and I can't envision a team giving that to him as well. And he has to kind of like almost rehabilitate his image a little bit more, and I'd actually rather bet on him opting for if he gets traded wherever he goes next summer. I think he's going to opt into his player option. So yeah, he's not quite on an expiring. It could be an expiring, but I kind of doubt it will be. So this is kind of a combination of factors, right? We have potentially looming free agency, although in my situation, I think that's going to be a player option, so expiring. So so these are our three factors here, right? We have one potentially looming free agency next summer. Again, I think he will opt into his deal and try to like rehab his image and land a max contract because I don't think he's going to get one this summer. So with Trae Young, these are our three factors at play. One, we have his player option, which I do think he will opt into because I don't think any deal he'll sign as a free agent this summer is going to pay him $50 million annually. And I think he's going to want that extra year to really kind of recoup some of that value. Two, we have who he is actually as a player, which is very flawed, but is also very strong on ball and can pretty much almost single-handedly power your team to a above average top 15, top 10 offense around at that age, despite his defensive weaknesses. And three, we have, of course, what Atlanta themselves are looking for. And I think that's where like Washington comes into play, right? I think his trade value is going to be very similar to what Brandon Ingram went for last year, which I think ended up being like an expiring contract plus one first round pick and a second round pick. The question is, will Washington be ready to give up that first round pick? Because in their eyes, we're giving Atlanta an expiring contract, which is very valuable in NBA and CJ McCollum. They'll probably also have to give up either I think Corey Kispert or like Bob Carrington to make the salary work because they're still like $10 million short or something like that. I'm not sure which one they'd rather give up. I think Kispert, of course, makes the team better in the short term right now as a shooter, but they spend a high draft pick on Bub, and I just don't think Bub really like fits with Trey long term, I guess, on this team. But again, there is a question of okay, is Trae Young actually going to be seen as like a long term fit for the Wizards? Because in this situation, which according to Mark Stein, the Hawks might actually have to dump a pick just to get off Trae Young. Yeah, they would trade CJ and probably Bub, honestly, in a heartbeat for Young and a first round pick, even if it meant that they were losing like Trae in a year or so. But yeah, again, I don't think that's going to be the case for Atlanta. Um, but I don't think but I don't think that will be the case for Atlanta. I know Trae Young's value is kind of in the dumps right now, but I would still bet on the Wizards giving up like a protected first at least, or maybe like 2 seconds instead of like the Hawks being the ones having to give up value because again, I understand Trae Young. There's a lot of, controversy. Not controversy. He's a very polarizing player and deservedly so. But this is still a guy at the end of the day. He's going to make this Wizards team better, right? You trade him there. Yeah, they might not be a championship contender with Trae Young at the helm, and they might not ever be. But he's going to make that offense with, like, if you think about Alex Sarr, who, he's a guy who, I don't know what he's averaging right now, maybe like 15, 16 points per game. Very athletic, awesome defender, of course, but he can't really create for himself on offense. He can do some little dribble drives. He can do some little bit of shot creation, kind of like Evan Mobley, right? But at the end of the day, like if you had Trae Young feeding him, an extra 3 to 4 times a game off pick and rolls, he can be a 20 plus points per game scorer this season even already. Same thing with like Bilal Coulibaly, right? He's a very good defender who can kind of shoot the ball a little bit, but he just doesn't have a lot of on-ball creation juice. And if you put a guy like Trae Young there, again with Trey Johnson too, who's already looking like one of the best shooters in the entire league. Yeah, Trae Young is going to make this offense a lot better from wherever they are right now, which is probably close to the bottom of the league, to being a lot. So yeah, if you had a guy like Trae Young to that core, he's going to make them a lot better, and they're going to instantly be a playoff level team. I don't know if they have enough time to make up for that ground this season, and I don't think they should try to. But next season, without question, because if you're gonna hide someone like Trae Young, yeah, having a guy like Alex Sarr or Kalabali like on the back lines, that's the exact like personnel you'd want. I do think his defensive fit next to Trey Johnson, who should be part of this future, is a lot more questionable. I don't view Trey as a plus defender. I'm not sure he ever will actually be one, just because of like athleticism and body type limits. Keyshawn George too, I think is like a honestly, I don't really have any thoughts on him defensively. He hasn't really stood out in any way bad or good to me, but he's someone who might have to be moved down to. Okay, I guess it depends on like if you're starting Corey Kispert still after all this goes down. But the point is, like, Trae Young makes this team better. I think he fits basketball wise. And if I'm the Wizards and I only have to give up CJ McCollum plus 2 second round picks, maybe, yeah, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. If it's like an unprotected first round pick, definitely not. We don't even have to talk about like actually trading some like valuable pieces like Trey Johnson or Alex Sarr. I think that's absolutely out of the question if you're the Wizards. Like you you can find like an NBA quality point guard, like a worse one to be sure, but through way cheaper means. Because those guys are still, I would still view these as like high lottery level like prospects with draft capital. And okay, so that's the Wizards though. Okay, but then you think, okay, but then you think, wait, Jeff, that's not a lot of value there, right? If the Wizards only have to trade CJ McCollum plus like maybe 2 second round picks, Atlanta, this is a guy who's been their franchise player for, 7 years now, almost a decade, right? He's led him to the conference finals. He is a fan favorite with Atlanta in the city. Even if the fans might be ready to see him go, they're not going to be happy with watching him leave for what's going to amount to like a salary dump, essentially. Which brings us to the point where okay, can the Hawks get something more than this from a different team? And honestly, right, if we think about the teams that are actually in position or need a player like Trae Young, there's only really like two teams that need a point guard that desperately, right? Who have the defensive infrastructure kind of offset this. One is the Rockets, who they are pretty much all out of contracts to trade for Young. This one doesn't make sense. They still have Fred VanVleet. And yeah, I don't think he's a natural fit next to like Sengun and whatever. That's just one name I've heard thrown around. It's not one I would bet on being involved in this in any way whatsoever. But that is a team that needs a point guard. The other team, however, that I do think is a lot more interesting are the Minnesota Timberwolves, who we know they've been kind of laboring without a point guard for like 2 seasons now, with Mike Conley really aging out. Dante DiVincenzo is more of a natural two guard, and Anthony Edwards is kind of really splitting these duties with Rob Dillingham and like Bones Highland. Neither of these guys really being what you want as like a full-time playmaking point guard who can actually play defense too. And of course, Trae Young does not fit that second part, but he does fit the aspect of, making this offense actually function without Anthony Edwards having to create everything with the ball in his hands. And defensively, they absolutely do have the pieces to make him still work. Obviously, you have Anthony Edwards, who when he's like engaged and locked in, is a really great defender who can really pressure you on ball. Jaden McDaniels is one of the best wing defenders in the entire league. And of course, you have Rudy Gobert, who is probably, to this day, I mean, he's having a fantastic season. You might not know this. He kind of started off the year a little bit, I would say, looking a little bit slow and old. And I was kind of concerned for the Wolves. But, I mean, he's really picked it up recently, especially offensively, too. I would say at this point, still is out of my top centers. I mean, I would have to take like Shet and Wemby, of course, over him at this point. Evan Mobley too defensively. But yeah, like I mean, am I taking him over Jaren Jackson Jr.? Like maybe still right now. He's definitely lost a bit of a step, He's still one of the best rim protectors in the entire league. Trae Young would give Rudy Gobert probably I mean, he has a really natural chemistry with Mike Conley, so maybe not the best, like, and easiest buckets of his life, but close to it, you know? I would actually be really excited to see the Wolves try to make a move for him. I'm not sure if it would actually be in the Wolves' best interest because if you trade for Trae Young and you're the Wolves, right? Like kind of you're thinking about you have to give up Naz Reid to be clear, right? To make up this contract. The only other guy you can trade is Julius Randle, and I think Julius Randle makes his team better than Trae Young would. But yeah, you're only like that's like their only other two contracts you can move aside from Gobert. It's Naz Reid and Julius Randle. And if you're trading Naz Reid, he's only making $20 million a year. You're going to have to give up like two more players to make up that salary. And for a team that's like not that deep, I mean, they have maybe I'd say eight guys I would trust to play in a playoff series. Yeah, I don't. You cannot afford to give up that second year player, not Jalen Wells. Was the Grizzlies, but the other Jalen and or like Terrence Shannon. Like you absolutely cannot trade these depth pieces because if you want to compete in the playoffs, you need to have like multiple guys who you can trust, right? That's not worth it for just Trae Young. I think just like logistically, even if I do think I would just want to just kind of insert him onto this team because I think that they have both a need for his offense and they could like really mask his defensive deficiencies. I don't see it. I don't see it happening logistically, which I'm sure I think Wolves fans honestly are not like too bummed about because I understand the concerns with adding Trae Young, especially for a team that feels like they're a piece away and are kind of saving those assets to make like a big trade to land a missing piece. I don't blame like the Wolves for not being interested in this because you make a move for Young and like that might kind of end up hurting you in the future down the line, of course. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it kind of seems like right now the Wizards are really the only team in play for him, and I can't really think of another team that like point guard is just such a not oversaturated position, but that's a position with the most talent in the league right now, right? And there's not many teams who need a guy like Trae Young at this point. I mean, like if you trade him from the Hawks, yeah. Also, by the way, if I'm the Hawks, I would much rather have like CJ McCollum this season rather than like Naz Reid, just because like positional fit wise. I mean, you already have Jalen Johnson. Like you want like more guards and shooting next to him, not another big man. But yeah, again, there's just not a lot of teams that could really use a guy like Trae Young, honestly. And I think that's going to really depress his off-season free agency value if he does opt out this summer, which I don't think he will. And yeah, I think whoever trades for him, which I actually like this Wizards deal for both teams, if they can like get this done for like CJ McCollum in a first or like 2 or 3 seconds maybe. I think he absolutely makes Washington better, and I think it's worth that first if it means developing Alex Sarr. And it doesn't even have to be like an unprotected first. It can just be like a lottery protected first next year or in 2 years, sorry, right? Obviously do not trade the 2026, sorry, pick. But yeah, my point is like I think you could add a lot of development to guys like Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr, and we've seen guys like John Collins and Kevin Herter have some of the best seasons of their careers next to Trae Young, right? A guy who like he's gonna make life easy for you on offense in terms of if you're not like a on ball creator, he will make life a lot easier for you on offense. There's more questions if you have another guy who is a passer, likes to have the ball in their hands, like Jalen Johnson, of course. But again, for the Wizards, a team right now which has a lot of guys who Trey Johnson has the potential to do this in the future, but right now he's more of just a shooter, right? For a team that has a lot of just like athletic pieces like Coulibaly and Alex Sarr, and shooters like Trey Johnson or Corey Kispert, and kind of a more do-it-all guy like Keyshawn George, I think adding someone like Trae Young can make their life on offense a lot easier. And then you can pick up whoever you want in this year's draft. They're probably going to be picking really high. Maybe it's like Kingston Flemings or Mikal Brown Jr., right? And you don't have to resign Trae Young next season, and he can go like to a different team. Um, yeah, but those are my thoughts. I think again, I really like Trae Young. I have a lot of respect for him. I've been kind of, he has been one of my most respected players since like 2021. I mean, he pretty much ended the entire like core of the Sixers, right? He dismantled that team by himself almost in terms of where they ended up going afterwards. And I mean, he could have made like a finals, honestly, in 2021, the conference finals. That series, I think they won game one, right? And if he didn't get hurt in game three, again, Giannis did get injured too as well. But point is, that was a heck of a run. It was 5 years ago at this point, though. Um, yeah, and I understand why Atlanta wants to get rid of him because if they retain him, they're gonna have to pay him a lot of money to re-sign him as a free agent, right? But yeah, those are all my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed and maybe learned something. Maybe you didn't. But yeah, I'll see you for the next one.